What's up YouTube? Welcome to CarAudioFabrication. In this video, I want to talk about the importance of not only making an install look beautiful, but making it functional as well. That's why in this video, we're going to be focusing on making a functional amp rack that not only will look beautiful once we cover it with a beauty panel, but it will also be very functional as it allows us to pivot the amps upwards so that we can access our battery as well as our wire distribution. In order to start building our amp rack, we will start by copying this OEM panel shape. This OEM panel is actually used to cover the spare tire location within the vehicle, and it will give us a great basis for our design. I have traced the shape onto a piece of 1/2 inch MDF, and now I'll rough cut it using a jigsaw. A steady hand with the jigsaw will give us an acceptable copy, but I want a flawless copy. So I'm going to be applying double-sided template tape and sticking the original OEM panel to our new version for copying using a flush trim router bit. The flush trim bit creates a copy of the OEM shape, but unfortunately the OEM shape is made of a cardboard-like material that deformed in some locations, so I need to come back and clean things up a little bit. I accomplished this by using some straight edge templates. My goal with this rack is to have a folding partition that holds 2 amplifiers and flips up for access to the battery and wire distribution from our last video. Here I'm planning out where I'll make a cut in order to allow this piece to fold. After double checking our measurements, we take the amp rack over to our table saw and cut along the fold line. For an added touch, I'm adding a round over to each side of our amp rack using a round over router bit. This gives us a more finished look and feels better when lifting the edges with your hand. This got me to thinking, and I decided that I wanted a small location for your fingers to be able to easily lift the amp rack. For this, I used a Mobile Solutions Smart template. I started with marking the location and then drilled a hole on the inside of the shape. This gives me access to use a flush trim router bit on the inside and thus copy that shape. Notice that here on the router I'm actually removing a little bit of the material before I make the final pass where I actually touch the bearing to the template shape. I copied this shape to the other side as well, and once again I used a round over bit to smooth the edges. Next I'm planning out the location of my hinges. These hinges are simple cabinet hinges from the hardware store. Also take note that I'm using 2 different pieces of wood in order to shim the gap between the hinges. This is a great way to ensure that we have a consistent gap before we start marking the mounting holes for the hinges. Once the mounting locations are marked, I secure the hinges to the amp rack using flange head wood screws. Once the hinges were mounted, I tested out the opening action. I'm pretty happy with how smoothly this actually opens up and down. I did decide that I need to make some more openings in the rack for wiring. The large ovals are for wires to run from the distribution block to the amps. The small half ovals towards the front of the vehicle are for wiring into the distribution center as well as out to the speakers of the vehicle. I also decided that since the board closest to me was going to have some weight on it from the amps, it was probably a good idea to add a support board. I made this quickly on the table saw and then added roundovers once again for a finished look. In order to secure the stiffening brace into place, I start with adding spot welds using CA glue. Once I'm positive that I'm happy with the location, I can then add a final solid bead. With these steps complete, I can now put the amplifier rack into place inside the trunk. I'm doing this once again just to verify that everything fits correctly, and once again I'm checking the hinge action. Everything looks perfectly copacetic, so it's time to move on to painting the amp rack. Bada bing, bada boom. That was easy. I just simply used some high build flat black paint straight out of an aerosol spray can. Like I mentioned in the battery rack build, another good option here would be truck bed liner. I've drilled and countersunk this hole in order to use this stainless steel bolt. This stainless steel bolt is actually going to mount the amp rack to the vehicle. I transfer the location of this mounting hole using a self-centering drill bit. I then drill a small hole in the sheet metal. I already double checked the other side of the sheet metal by crawling underneath the vehicle and verifying that there weren't any fuel lines, any brake lines, or the fuel tank itself underneath this location. I actually drilled a small hole first so that I can be super sure and double check the location of the hole that I'm drilling. It seems like a no-brainer that you want to be sure of what's on the other side of the sheet metal, but you'd be surprised how many people drill straight into gas tanks. Don't make that same mistake. I'm drilling this hole in preparation for a rivet nut, but before we install it I want to make sure that we protect the exposed metal. I'm using a small amount of touch-up paint to paint the exposed metal. Next, I thread a 1/4-20 stainless steel rivet nut onto my rivet nut installation tool. This tool allows me to place the rivet nut into the hole and expand it, permanently creating a threaded mounting location. All we have to do to then mount the amp rack is use our fasteners to bolt it into place. Some of you guys were asking in the last video how the battery was actually held into place. This bolted down surface now holds the battery securely in its position. Now we can move on to mounting our amplifiers. After carefully aligning the amplifiers and measuring them into position, I'm using a center punch in order to mark the centers of each of the holes. I didn't really get great footage of that, so sorry about that, but this gives me a nice spot to accurately start the drill bit. Behind each of these holes, I'm using what's called a T-nut. This allows me to put machine threads for a machine bolt into wood. For more details on T-nuts, check out the link in the video description. With the T-nuts installed, I can now bolt down my 2 CT Sounds amplifiers. And there we have it, a completely functioning amp rack that gives us access to our battery and wire distribution below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please give a quick Hulk smash of that like button. Also, I've put up some sneak peek pictures of the next step over on my Instagram page at CarAudioFab, so if you want to stay updated between videos, be sure to check that out. Now, a lot of you guys were sending me messages and telling me about how a fellow YouTuber was trying to use YouTube as a casual encounter service. Something about me, his buddy, and a chupacabra. Sorry bro, I don't know what you're into, but I just don't get into that kind of thing. In all honesty, I'm having some more bantering fun with my buddy Doug from Soundman Car Audio. He's actually also working on a video build log type video series right now, and he's actually working on making some custom fiberglass kick panels. So if you guys are into custom fabrication, which, I mean, come on, obviously you're into custom fabrication, go check out his videos as well. Pretty cool stuff. I like what he's doing with his build, even if it takes him 1,000 videos to get it done. Burn! And as always, a special thanks goes out to all the Patreon supporters: Emmanuel, Nathan, Rory, Andrew, Eddie, Eric, Richard, Mark, Truman, and Jerry, along with all the other Patreon supporters. Thank you guys for all your support and helping me to make these videos. It's greatly appreciated. Everyone else, thank you for always smashing those like buttons and viewing these videos. I appreciate that just as much. Thank you guys for watching.